They laughed at the woman in 12F, but she rescued a billionaire from a deadly stroke. The airplane rattled like a can in a dog's mouth, shaking the passengers from their calm before the storm. In the cramped cabin, eyes darted nervously, restless fingers gripped armrests, and over at 12F sat a woman with the same unruffled expression as the eye of a tornado. It was as if her gaze defied the chaos surrounding her, but little did they know the danger was only beginning. A hush swept through the aisle, a moment pregnant with tension, as the flight attendant announced a sudden emergency landing. Gasps erupted around her, but the woman appeared calm and almost prepared. Passengers whispered among themselves. "Who does she think she is?" They chuckled at the woman in 12F. "Maybe she has some kind of witch," one scoffed, rolling their eyes. But as the plane's engine screamed their protest, it became clear she wasn't just an ordinary traveler. As sweat drenched the brows of the other passengers, she tightened her grip on the thin string of her necklace, her knuckles white. She was waiting, watching. Out of the corner of her eye, she noticed a tall man across the aisle gasping for breath, his face turning ashen. Curiosity mingled with panic as his beautiful tailored suit didn't match the chaos unfolding within his body. His eyes locked onto hers, pleading for help. Suddenly it dawned on her that this billionaire, with his perfectly groomed hair and glimmering cufflinks, was slipping away. A wave of urgency washed over her. "Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect." In an instant, she plunged into action. The laughter faded, replaced by the urgent whispers fueling the tension around her. She leapt from her seat, pushing through the chaos, her chest tight with adrenaline. Time warped. She could see it in the way the light flickered, and how others seemed frozen, waiting. The man's breathing grew shallower, panic-stricken eyes wildly scanning the cabin. Was this the end? Would they witness his fate unfold right before them? As she knelt beside him, the air felt electric with fear. She only had moments, and inside her, a storm swirled too. What if she couldn't save him? And in that moment, she reached for her cell phone, the familiar device that could be their only salvation or their greatest curse. Would it connect her to hope, or would it seal their doom in this rapidly unfolding crisis? Panic thundered through the cabin as she pressed the phone against her ear. One ring, two rings, would someone pick up? Come on, come on! She muttered under her breath, her heart racing. All around her, the passengers transformed from indifferent gawkers to desperate witnesses, their expressions twisting from derision to fear, as reality hit them like a punch. The sleek interior threatened to close in on them, the air thick with dread. "Mason! You have to breathe!" she shouted, weaving an arm under the man's knees and his shoulders, cradling him like a fragile child. His body felt cold, a stark contrast to the hot chaos building within the cabin. "Ma'am, are you all right?" A flight attendant's voice snapped her back for a moment. It was all noise and confusion, but she pressed on. "Call for help," she barked, her gaze sharp. "He's not okay. He needs..." She didn't even know what he needed. Oxygen? A doctor? The dark abyss of panic threatened to swallow her whole. The phone buzzed in her hand, making her jump. A voice blared in her ear, crackling with urgency. 911, what's your emergency? I'm on a plane. A man is having a stroke. Please, we need immediate assistance. But before she could finish, Mason's eyes rolled back, his body going limp. A gasp rippled through the aisles. The woman's heart plummeted. Time slowed further, and the cabin lights dimmed. "Mason, stay with me." She pinched his jaw and tried to keep him conscious. The airplane rumbled like angry thunder, making her grip tighten. The operator's voice cut through her hazy panic. "Get someone to assist him. Look for a medical professional on board. Are you kidding me?" She looked around frantically, but the glances were fleeting, the tension too thick for anyone to move. Then she spotted him. A middle-aged man in a tweed jacket, who she almost mistook for just another anxious passenger. Their eyes met, and she felt an inkling of hope spark as she waved him towards her. He stumbled forward, finally breaking free from the grip of fear that had paralyzed him. "I'm a doctor," he said, kneeling beside her. "Thank God." Her voice broke, and she fought to control her rising despair. "Let me take over," he instructed firmly, pushing her hands aside, a wave of authority washing over him. She felt a strange mix of relief and fear. It wasn't he just Mason anymore. This was someone else's life on the line. With a series of steady, practiced movements, the doctor assessed Mason, counting his pulse and watching his breathing with careful precision. The tension around them simmered as the other passengers observed in awed silence, some praying, some staring as if it were a movie unfolding before their eyes. "Quick! I need an AED!" he shouted, and the urgency jolted her back to the reality that this wasn't just a crisis for Mason, but for everyone. "Here!" She fumbled through the underbelly of the overhead compartment, searching blindly until her fingers finally grasped the cold metal case. She yanked it out, and rushed back to the doctor. "This is not the place for this to happen, please," she whispered. As the doctor worked feverishly at rousing Mason, she felt dread creep in what would happen next. Would the billionaire survive this flight, or would they become another chapter in the tragic stories shared among the passengers? Suddenly, the announcement blared through the intercom, and her heart raced once more. "We're preparing for emergency landing. Please secure your seatbelts." But wasn't there one more thing they could do? Desperate, she squeezed Mason's hand, willing life into him, hoping against hope that somehow, someway, he would respond. Even as her mind spiraled with fear, she refused to look away. The plane rocked again, and she caught the doctor's eyes. "Don't give up, Mason. Fight." What was happening beyond the thin walls of the cabin loomed larger than life itself. Was this the moment everything would change? More than just a life hung in the balance. And as the emergency lights flickered on, illuminating faces brimming with dread, the stakes had never been higher. With reality closing in, another twist lurked just beyond reach. Whatever it was, she knew their fight was just beginning. The cabin lurched violently, sending the lights flickering and passengers gasping. Hearts raced, her own hammering in her chest, threatening to leap out. Mason lay limp and pale, the doctor's hands moving with frantic precision. She could hardly breathe as dread clawed at her throat. "Stay with us, Mason!" the doctor shouted, working the pads of the AED onto Mason's chest. "Clear!" he ordered, stepping back. The passengers went deathly silent, a heavy blanket of anticipation draping over them. As the machine whirred to life, she held her breath, her mind racing through prayers and pleas. A sudden jolt. The machine shocked Mason. His body jerked, but still, there was no reaction. The doctor's brow furrowed as he quickly checked Mason's pulse again. Again. He was on a tightrope, balancing between hope and despair, and she felt that precariousness. "Clear!" Another shock. A gasp escaped from the passengers, a collective surge of hope that didn't land anywhere. Mason's body convulsed once more, and then nothing. A wave of despair swept through her. A woman in the back let out a small whimper, fingers squeezing her partner's hand in shared agony. "Come on," she whispered, barely more than a breath. The overhead bins rattled with turbulence as the plane plummeted for a dangerously fast descent. "Are we going down?" someone cried, the fear laced in their voice palpable. "Focus!" the doctor barked, his voice cutting through the rising panic. "We can't lose him." At that moment, she saw the flight attendants moving with purpose. They grabbed oxygen masks and began to administer them to other passengers. "Wait, what about Mason?" she croaked, straining to look into the doctor's eyes. "He needs, don't divert attention," he snapped. "Just keep squeezing his hand." The cabin's tension reached a breaking point, chaos wrapping its arms around them. People shouted at each other, unsure of what to do. Phones were pulled out, recording the unfolding horror. She fought through the din, focusing entirely on Mason, The doctor pressed the AED pads once again, desperate, and leaned close to the unconscious man. Mason! You need to fight. I need you. Nothing. Silence wrapped itself around them, heavier than before. The flight attendants exchanged worried glances. Then, miraculously, Mason's eyelids twitched. Hold on, she cried, squeezing his hand harder. Talk to him. Remind him why he has to fight, the doctor urged, voice low but steady. Mason, listen to me. Your company, your family, everyone needs you back. You have to hold on. The aircraft jolted again, causing her to stumble. Her heart sank further. She couldn't give up now. Distraction wouldn't help. She needed to stay focused. With all that was in her, she recounted memories, their shared moments. Mason, we were going to change the world together. You promised to help those in need. Don't let this fight be your last. Outside the little window, thunderclouds swirled darkly, flashes of lightning illuminating the tense atmosphere inside. The doctor took Mason's pulse again and locked eyes with her, a glimmer of urgency sparking. Just then, Mason's hand stirred in hers, his fingers weakly squeezing back. I think yes, the doctor began, but the cabin echoed with a loud bang as the plane jolted again, this time with an ominous rumble that skated across their nerves. Get ready for emergency landing. Brace yourselves. The captain's voice yelled through the intercom with a sharp immediacy. She felt a cold chill wrap around her. What if they didn't make it? Would the plane keep going down? The ground looked far too close, the urgency in the cockpit mirrored by something dark lurking in their approach. Hang on! She shouted at Mason fiercely. Would there be time to save him? Suddenly, something flickered in Mason's eyes. Was it awareness? Was it life? The plane shook violently again, and everyone braced themselves. Mason's eyes opened wider now, meeting hers. What, where? His voice was raspy, and a thread of fear crept into the air. Just hold on. But would that be enough as the plane descended faster and faster, uncertain fate and peril surrounding them all? And something deep inside her knew that whatever lay ahead in the skies, this rescue was just the very beginning. The roar of the engines filled the cabin, an angry protest against the chaos unfolding within. Her heart raced alongside the frantic pace of the descent. With every jolt, Mason's weak grip strained, as if he were pulling her out of the void, and she clung to that thread of hope. Mason! Can you hear me? Hold on! Just hold on! She fell breathless, her words a desperate plea against the deafening turbulence surrounding them. The doctor's face was a mask of concentration, sweat glistening on his forehead as he prepared for one last attempt. His hand moved to the AD again, but she couldn't take her eyes off Mason. His breathing seemed to stutter, a slight gasp escaping his lips. Is it too late? His voice was barely audible, thin as the tension in the air. No! She almost shouted, panic propelling her words. It's not too late! It can't be! She had to believe that. Above them, the overhead compartments rattled ominously. Each crash of thunder matched the thud of her heart. Clear! The doctor pressed forward with renewed determination, bringing the pads back to Mason's chest. The machine came alive again, a mechanical voice echoing through the cabin. People had taken to clutching one another, an unspoken agreement binding them in shared anxiety. Faces twisted in horror, breath held tight, all awaiting salvation or disaster. Everyone seemed caught in a moment outside of time, where the line between life and death danced precariously. The cabin shook again, sending a fresh wave of terror through the passengers. Someone screamed. It ruptured the tension like a balloon bursting. Panic spread through the aisle like wildfire. But her focus remained tethered to Mason. Come on, Mason. Fight! She implored, her voice cracking with emotion. Outside the storm raged, pouring rain that tapped against the windows like desperate hands pleading for a chance. Suddenly, the AED emitted a sharp beep. The cabin fell into a suffocating silence as they all waited. The doctor leaned closer, his breath a whisper against Mason's ear. You have to wake up now, Mason. Do it for her. Do it for yourself. With a deep breath, she squeezed his hand tighter. Remember all the dreams we had? You can't leave them behind. We have to do this together. And just like that, in the next fleeting second, Mason's body jerked violently. The shocks pulsed through him, a spark igniting somewhere inside. His eyes widened, and a raw, instinctive gasp escaped him. "She's right!" the doctor shouted. "One more time! Clear!" The command boomed, and the room surged with electrical energy as the machine jolted Mason again. This time he flinched, a flicker of response lighting his gaze. "Mason, come on! Come back to me!" She was yelling now, panic clawing at her throat. The plane's descent grew steeper, a sickening pull anchored in her gut. Outside, the clouds churned like abyss, dark tendrils reaching for them as they fell. Each second stretched, the uncertainty casting shadows on every hopeful thought. But she could see it, a glimmer of fight in Mason's eyes. Then the moment froze, something flicked in the air, a sound. "Mayday! Mayday!" The cockpit blared through the intercom, amplifying the chaos. Everyone glanced at each other, confusion mingling with fear. A flight attendant rushed down the aisle, their pale face betraying darker realities. "Brace for impact." The world slowed to a crawl. Hearts raced in a collective pulse of terror. In that moment, her mind whirled, scrambling for control as the firefighters and her heart surged toward Mason, urging him. "Fight! Stay alive!" Then came the dreadful sound, the plane shuddering, the impact. Something primal kicked in, their bodies instinctively shifting, bracing against the confines of their seats. "Mason!" She screamed it, no longer just a name but a lifeline pulling at the fabric of impending doom. But would he break free from the pull of shadows looming closer? With one last breath, she waited for the storm to unveil its truth. Would they find safety, or would they crash into the unknown abyss, with Mason's fight resting on the edge of fate? And perhaps, just perhaps, if they survived, she would learn more than just how to save a life. What was happening in the cockpit was far worse than anyone suspected. The force of the impact shook the cabin. Metallic sounds echoed like a symphony of anguish as drinks flew from cups, and bags tumbled from overhead compartments like confetti at a funeral. But amidst the chaos, she felt Mason's hand twitch against hers. It was the smallest flicker of life, yet it lit a fire in her chest. She refused to surrender, not now. Not when she felt the flutter of hope. "Mason! Please!" Her voice sliced through the swirling panic, desperation clinging to every word. She hadn't come this far to lose him. As the plane wobbled and groaned, she caught glimpses of fear-stricken faces, some frozen in disbelief, others weeping openly. The flight attendant, pale and trembling, moved further down the aisle, directing people to brace themselves for any eventuality. The doctor remained at Mason's side, his eyes scanning the instruments with a frantic determination. "We need more oxygen," he barked, and her heart plummeted. Right now, just focus on Mason. She could feel the anger bubbling within. Why was no one helping? They were all in this together, and if they were going down, they'd go down fighting. A distant voice cut through a distorted announcement from the cockpit. "Emergency protocols initiated. Prepare for possible water landing." The words sent a fresh wave of terror cascading through the passengers. Water landing? They weren't equipped for that. With no time to waste, she leaned closer to Mason, who was gasping as if trying to swim through a sea of darkness. "You have to fight for us, for everything we wanted," she pleaded, her throat tightening. "Please, Mason." A glimmer of recognition flickered in his eyes. The way he looked at her was almost unfocused, but something inside him responded. There was fire, pulsing behind that fogged gaze, and she clutched onto it, letting it pull her back into hope. An ear-piercing shriek rang out. The cockpit door swung open. A crew member staggered in, urging the doctor to come with him. "We need you back here. Now." There was urgency in the man's voice. Something dreadful brewed behind those cabin doors. She could feel her breath catching in her throat as she met the doctor's eye. "You can't leave him. Mason needs you." But he hesitated, torn between two impossible responsibilities. The plane shook violently again, and she felt the cabin tilt. Panic rose like bile in her throat. No! No! In an instant, the doctor made his decision. He dropped the AED, stripped off his lab coat, and ran toward the cockpit. Stay strong, Mason. I'll be right back. His voice faded as he disappeared into the chaos. Despair twisted in her chest. She was alone to face the storm, and Mason's pulse was fading again. Stay with me, she shouted, panic igniting her words. The sounds of panic erupted, yells mingling with the distant roar of engines that seemed to have taken on a new, ominous life. Suddenly, the cabin lights flickered, and her heart sank. This was it. They didn't have a lot of time left, and as the plane plunged lower, she felt the weight of every moment slipping away. Mason, please! Tears streamed down her cheeks, blurring her vision. Time was running out, and yet she could feel the fragile thread connecting them. Then Mason's fingers trembled again, the barest squeeze, and it sparked something fierce inside her. She wouldn't give up. Outside, through the thick clouds, a flash of wild lightning illuminated the cockpit. A colossal wave of noise surged against them, and the cabin filled with gasps. Something was happening, and it was catastrophic. Then she heard it, a distant thud, like something catastrophic happening at the front of the plane. Her heart raced anew, shifting from fear to dread. As the plane trembled around her, she locked her gaze on Mason, his chest heaving, his eyelids fluttering. Would anyone stand up against the dark tide? Would they overpower this madness? Please fight for us, she urged once more, knowing that whatever came next would change everything. Then the cockpit door burst open, and a figure staggered back into the cabin. The flight crew was coming down, covered in sweat and panic, their faces pale but resolute. We need to. Before the voice could finish, the cabin lurched again, throwing everyone to the floor. Screams echoed, but she couldn't let it drown her out. Mason was slipping away, but as she reached for him, she felt another surge of desperation flood through her. This was only the beginning, and whatever was happening in that cockpit would determine their fate. She took a deep breath, ready to stand tall. Could they endure the storm? Would Mason resurface from the brink? The next moments would be life or death. Exactly how far would she fight to save the one person she couldn't fathom losing? The roar of the wind outside was deafening, drowning out the cries of passengers. Fear seeped into every corner of the cabin, coiling around her like a suffocating blanket. She could barely keep her wits about her, but one thing anchored her: the still warmth of Mason's hand in hers, a tether to the life she fought so hard to save. Mason! She shouted, her voice cracking as she leaned closer, trying to shake him awake. You have to fight. I can't lose you. The chaos became a blur, her racing heart deafening all other sounds. The darkness in his eyes began to deepen, and she could feel herself slipping into panic. Ma'am! A flight attendant rushed toward her, skidding on the tilting floor. We need to clear the aisles. She looked back at the frantic crew member trying to herd frightened passengers. We've got to prepare for possible evacuation. Evacuation? Her breath hitched. She had no idea if Mason could survive that. But what choice did they have? She shook her head furiously. No! I'm staying right here. The attendant hesitated before glancing at Mason. His body seemed limp, vulnerable. Agony creased the flight attendant's brow, but the urgency of the situation propelled her. We need to make sure everyone gets out safely. No! The desperation in her voice shattered through the din. I can't. Not without him. Time was creeping forward, but it felt like a thief, stealing precious moments away from her. With every thud of the plane against the storm, she felt closer to losing him, closer to losing everything. Just then, another loud crash reverberated from the cockpit, followed by frantic shouting and the shrill screech of alarm. Instinctively, her eyes darted toward that door where the crew had disappeared. Whatever happened back there could seal their fates. A sudden jolt threw her off balance, and she barely managed to hold onto the armrest to prevent herself from hitting the floor. Heart racing, she looked down at Mason. His breath was labored, uneven, and she could see the sheen of sweat on his brow. Then it hit her, the AED. Hang on, Mason, please. I'm going to get help. She reluctantly released his hand and scrambled to her feet, adrenaline pumping through her veins. With each step, she felt the cabin lurch, but determination drove her forward. Shoving past the panicked passengers, she squeezed through the narrow aisles torn between chaos and despair. She spotted the AED lying just a few feet away, nestled in the service area, and her heart soared. But before she could reach it, the cabin rocked again, and she had to grip the wall to stay upright. "Stay back!" A crew member's shout cut through the noise, but she couldn't stop. The thought of getting that AED grounded her. She dove forward, snatching the device up, praying it would be enough. "Someone help them! Please!" She turned, struggling to retrace her steps. The flash of panic mingled with cries of the terrified passengers pressing closer together. But in her mind, there was only Mason. He needed her. As she stumbled back, she felt a surge of hope building. She had the tool that could bring him back, and she was ready to fight, ready to face whatever lay ahead. Suddenly, the cockpit door flew open again. In rushed the doctor, his face painted with urgency. "We need everyone calm. There's no time to waste." He locked eyes with her, and for a heartbeat, she saw the same desperation mirrored back at her. "Mason's in there. I have an AED," she shouted, her voice rising above the chaos. A flicker of relief crossed the doctor's face before he turned back to the crew. "Let us move. We need to stabilize him and get everyone ready to brace for a crash," echoed throughout the cabin as the plane hit another turbulence spike. The overhead bins flew open, spilling bags and personal items into the aisles. It was chaos, but within that chaos she felt a sense of purpose, her resolve hardening. She plunged back toward Mason, the AED clenched tightly. "Hold on, please," she urged, kneeling beside him again, her heart racing. Would they harness the strength to survive the storm? Was hope flickering alive within him, or was it dwindling to nothing? The crew swirled around her, and time seemed to stretch thin. Would she be able to revive him before it was too late? Or was this the last goodbye? As the plane shuddered again, something within her surged in unyielding determination. But in that moment, a shadow crossed her mind. What if the storm raging outside was nothing compared to the turmoil growing within the cockpit? And would they make it in time to uncover the truth? Mason lay there, pale and unresponsive, as she positioned the AED and pressed the button to power it up. The electronic voice blared through the noise, instructing her step by step. Place the pads on the patient's bare chest. She hurriedly peeled off his shirt, the fabric sticking to sweat-soaked skin, her hands trembling. Panic gnawed at her, she needed to stay focused. Every second felt like an eternity. A jolt of warmth radiated from her fingertips as she placed the pads exactly where they needed to go. Analyzing heart rhythm, the device warned, and tension escalated, squeezing her chest tighter. "No! Please," she whispered. "Not now." The room fell silent for a heartbeat, every set of eyes in the cabin locked onto her desperate act. She could only hope Mason's heart was still fighting. Her life hinged on those few words from the machine Shock advised. "Stand clear." She pressed the button, a jolt of electricity coursing through Mason. He jerked, body responding to the shock, but his eyes remained closed. A collective gasp echoed around her. "Come on, Mason! Come back!" Seconds faded into the chaos around them. The flight attendants were still shielding other passengers, their brow furrowed with worry. The doctor was focused, his strong hands helping her steady the paddles. "One more time," he demanded. As she prepared to repeat the process, the plane lurched violently, pitching everyone forward. She braced herself against the edge of the seat, eyes frozen on Mason's chest. Would this last push bring him back? "Stay still!" someone shouted. An argument broke out nearby, a handful of travelers unwilling to comply with the doctor's call for calm. "We need to evacuate." "No! We can't leave him!" The words burst from her before she could stop them. "We're not going anywhere without Mason. Listen to me." The crew's voice rose above the fray, urgency crackling. "We are in control here." "Control?" a man burst out. "Look at us. We're not safe. None of us. In that moment, she felt powerless, stuck between hope and fear. As they argued, each moment that passed felt like a mounting rock pressing down on her chest, squeezing the air from her lungs. Help me, she pleaded, turning to the doctor, who had just finished assessing Mason again. He looked grim but determined. Get ready for another shock. Heart racing, she complied, placing the pads again. Please, Mason. I need you to wake up. Hearkening to her command, the AED barked its orders again. Analyzing heart rhythm. More silence washed over the cabin, hearts collectively holding their breath. Even the storm outside seemed to hesitate in its assault, as if unsure of the unfolding scene. Suddenly, a cough erupted from deep within Mason's chest, shattering the silence. She looked down, hope igniting fiercely in her heart as his eyes flickered open, a gaze swimming through confusion and fear. Mason! Laughter, tears, fear, it all swirled together as she cradled his head, relief flooding her veins. But just as joy blossomed, alarm lights began flashing frantically in the cockpit. The flight crew scrambled, shouts of critical failure piercing through the cabin's earlier panic. What was happening? The doctor's relief turned to dread. He glanced at the cockpit door, eyes darkening. We need to land quickly. Flashes of terror rippled through the passengers, whispers of another uncontrollable wave of chaos looming. It felt like the calm before an even worse storm. What do we do? She asked, now terrified for more reasons than Mason's health. Once stable, he reached for her, voice hoarse. What's going on? Something's wrong. The cockpit, but before they could unravel the truth, the flight attendants were again urging everyone to brace for impact. The atmosphere charged with imminent dread. Was this the moment they'd been fighting against? Brace for impact. The command fell like a hammer, shaking their world. Just before impact, everything trembled. The truth behind the cockpit storm was about to be revealed, but would they survive long enough to grasp it? The plane shook violently, a gut-wrenching twist that sent a ripple of screams through the cabin. She gripped Mason's hand, searching his eyes for reassurance, even as dread coiled in her stomach. Hold on, please, she begged, her voice barely rising above the chaos. Outside the small oval windows, lightning danced against the dark clouds. The roar of the thunder seemed to echo through her bones. It was as if the world beyond was just as frantic as their situation, a storm brewing in tandem with the turmoil within the aircraft. Brace! Brace! The flight attendant's voice was sharp, cutting through the rising panic. She could see passengers adjusting their seats, their faces a mix of fear and disbelief. This was happening. Not here. Not now. Suddenly, a loud bang reverberated through the aircraft, followed by another violent shudder. Oxygen masks dropped down, dangling in front of panicked faces. What the hell is going on? Someone shouted, their voice trembling. Mason! We need to get you to safety. She was losing control, the situation escalating faster than her racing heart could keep up. Ignoring the masks, she focused solely on him. We need to evacuate. The doctor's voice cut through her frantic thoughts. We don't have much time. She felt the weight of his words sink in. They were in immediate danger. She reluctantly fumbled for the mask and pulled it over Mason's face, a frantic hope that it would sustain him just a bit longer. Stay with me, okay? Stay alert. He nodded slowly, though the fear etched across his features threatened to shatter her heart. They were a world apart from normality, suspended in an airplane hurtling toward an unknown fate. We're going to die in here. Someone wailed, and the cries echoed around them, a chorus of fear. In that moment, doubt wormed its way into her mind. Could they survive this? Not if we don't do something, she shouted. Everyone, listen. We're not going to die. She couldn't let despair take root, not when Mason leaned heavily against her, fighting to stay conscious. But the plane lurched again, and the fear of the unknown clawed at her insides. She felt the cold metal beneath her fingers, her grip tightening as if it possessed the power to anchor them to life. The cockpit door flew open, and the co-pilot stumbled into view, his face ghostly pale. We have a critical failure in the main system. We need to ditch. Prepare for water landing. Gasps filled the cabin, terror spreading like wildfire. A water landing? It felt impossible, overwhelming. The sound of alarms filled her ears, each beat digging deeper into her awareness of their dire predicament. Prepare for impact. Shaking hands reached for her seatbelt, fumbling with trembling fingers. She helped Mason buckle in, panic flooding her senses. Stay strong. As the plane descended, she could only trust Mason's hand would remain steady in hers, giving her strength when hers was fading. The cabin felt like it was shrinking, the chaos closing in. Everyone, brace for a water landing. Screams mixed with the whir of machinery, a malicious symphony of chaos that drowned out her resolve. Through the noise, she locked eyes with Mason, clinging to a glimmer of hope. We'll get through this, she promised, but doubt tinged her voice. They could not perish here. Time stretched as the plane neared the surface, reality morphing into a slow-motion nightmare. If only she could harness enough strength, enough courage to fight back. And then, darkness swallowed them whole. The moments that followed blurred into confusion, water flooded around them, screams replaced by silence, chaos swallowed by a heart-stopping stillness. She didn't know if Mason was still there, but she desperately clung to the spark of his presence. With newfound determination, she would find him. They would survive this disaster. But as her head broke through the surface, gasping for air, a sudden realization struck. She wasn't alone in the water. Something else lurked beneath the surface. What had they really survived? The cold water stung her skin as she surged to the surface, her lungs screaming for air. Panic clawed at her throat, but she fought it back, focusing only on survival. She gasped, waves crashing around her, the salty taste of the ocean mixing with the metallic tang of fear. Mason! She shouted, her voice raw and desperate, swallowed by the violent sea. Heart racing, she scanned the chaos, watching debris tumble and float around her like memories shattered. Passengers were emerging from the wreckage, coughing, clinging to fragments of hope. But the fear in their eyes matched her own. Then she spotted him, a flash of bright orange. His life jacket! Mason! With every ounce of strength, she kicked her legs, propelling herself through the churning water. Waves crashed over her, submerging her briefly, but she didn't let the darkness take her again. She could almost feel him. With her fingertips grazing the slick surface, she finally caught hold of him, pulling him close. His face was pale, eyes fluttering. Breathe, please, she urged, shaking him gently. She pressed the life jacket into his grasp, willing him alive. The water around them felt deceptively calm, contrasting the storm of chaos swirling in her chest. Mason? His eyes blinked open, struggling to focus. I thought his voice was weak. I can't swim, hold on tight. She wrapped her arms around him, drawing him closer, feeling his heart thud against her. We'll get through this. But the water grew more turbulent, each swell unbearable. As she steadied them on a piece of wreckage, she couldn't shake the feeling they weren't safe just yet. The water churned and dark forms flickered below. Shadows loomed within the depths of the unknown. Mason, we need a boat. The realization struck as she surveyed the wreckage floating nearby. We can't just stay here. She peered into the fracturing waves, eyes squinting for any sign of rescue, anything that could pull them from this abyss. As they bobbed on the surface, she kept scanning, fear throttling her throat as each crashing wave surged nearby. Look! She exclaimed, pointing wildly as a flare shot across the sky in brilliant red. That's our chance. It has to be. Where? Mason struggled to follow her gaze, still dazed. Over there. She spurred them forward, her instincts propelling her despite the frigid water dragging at her limbs. Clinging to him, she thrust them toward a cluster of floating bodies and debris where survivors were gathering. Each stroke was a battle, each pull a reminder of their grim reality. From behind the wreckage, a monstrous splash sent a shadow shooting past them. Her heart plummeted. Were the shadows merely the remnants of the plane, or something far more sinister lurking? Mason! She tightened her grip, forcing herself to keep moving even as the panic threatened to drown her. We're almost there. Keep kicking! One survivor, a woman tangled in a mass of seatbelts, screamed as she struggled, her cries piercing the chaos. She didn't see the shape darting beneath the surface. Help! The woman cried, her voice shrill with terror. The fear resonated deep within Sophia. Someone please! Sophia glanced back at Mason, who was shivering now, fighting against the water's embrace. I can't leave her! She screamed over the cacophony, feeling a surge of instinct overpower rational thought. Mason! Stay here, I'll get help! She couldn't let fear dictate their choices. She pushed away, her heart pounding as she swam toward the woman, sensing the dangerous presence draw closer beneath the surface. Grab my hand! She outstretched her arm, ignoring the tremors of fear rallying beneath her skin. But then she heard a low, rumbling growl, a thrum of something formidable beneath. Just as she reached for the woman, a dark shape surged upward, breaking the surface with ferocious strength, eyes glinting with wicked intent. What terror awaited them in these waters? The creature broke through the water, jaws agape, a flash of sharp teeth glistening like daggers in the chaotic light. Sophia's heart raced. Terror coursed through her veins, amplifying her senses. No! She screamed, adrenaline fueling her limbs. Holding on to the survivor's hand, she pulled with everything she had, desperate to reach safety. The woman clawed at the water, panic-stricken. Let go! It's too late for me. No! You can't give up! Sophia shouted back, fighting the urge to look at the impending threat. The fear would only anchor her down. Trust me, please! Just then, Mason's voice cut through the chaos. Sophia! I'm right here! His words grounded her amidst the tempest, reminding her to keep her focus. Keep swimming! She yelled back toward him, eyes fixed on their goal. She could sense the dark shape circling beneath them, like a predator stalking prey. With every frantic stroke, she felt the pull of fear tugging at her heart. Drawing on every ounce of strength left in her, she kicked harder, urging the woman and herself forward. The shadow cut through the water again, closer this time. Her pulse quickened. They had to get to the flotsam, they had to Mason. Grab her! I'm almost there. Finally reaching the woman, she gripped her arm tightly, using every ounce of determination to propel them both closer to the makeshift safety raft. Mason took hold of Sophia's waist, his strong grip anchoring her. They were almost there. Half a dozen more frantic strokes, and they'd break free from the clutches of peril. But the water exploded beneath them as if the depths had become a raging beast. A tail whipped around, sending waves crashing, nearly toppling them over. Sophia's breath caught in her throat. It was now or never. Hold on! As they surged toward the floating debris, Mason's hand reached for the woman's, and together, they hoisted her onto the wreckage. Sophia followed immediately, clambering onto the splintered piece as another free-fall ripple surged through the water. The beast was still close, still lurking. Mason pulled Sophia onto the makeshift raft with urgency. Their eyes locked, fear and determination fueling their resolve. We made it! He gasped, breathless. But their reprieve was short-lived as the impossibly large shape broke the surface again, lunging toward them. The sheer enormity sent tremors through the very water. They clung to, a cruel reminder that they weren't out of danger yet. No! Sophia screamed, throwing herself back toward Mason, clutching tight as another wave crashed against the makeshift raft. We can't give up now! The creature approached, and panic erupted again, threatening to choke her. It dove down again, but then she saw something miraculous, the distant glimmer of rescue boats appearing on the horizon, lights flashing in the gathering twilight. Look! She cried out, hope igniting in her chest. Help is coming! But the beast mustered a last desperate attack, a surge of ferocity aimed directly at them. She could feel the water rush beneath them, its grip tightened like a vice around her heart. Mason! We have to be ready! Mason and Sophia instinctively clung to each other, pulling the survivor close, a triad of defiance against the darkness looming beneath. The creature approached ominously. It was going to strike. At that moment, Mason's voice rang out, clear and unmistakable. No! We want to be your prey. As if hearing him, the beast dipped below the surface, hesitating. It sensed the determination burning like a fire against despair. The roar of engines resonated overhead as the rescue boats closed in, and the creature submerged, perhaps sensing defeat. "Keep fighting!" Sophia cried, urging Mason and the woman to keep their grips steady as they steadied themselves on the raft. And there it was, a glimmer, barely visible but unmistakable. The rescue boats were almost there. "Help is coming!" she shouted once again, her voice imbued with fierce hope as she kicked toward the flashing lights. "Stay with me!" The rescue team swooped in, pulling survivors from the water like angels sent from above. Clinking echoes of safety nets splashed around them, the sound heralding the end of their torment. Sophia held Mason tight, never letting go, as the pounding of her heart echoed the deafening roar of hope. As hands pulled Mason to safety, together they clambered aboard the rescue vessel, panting hard from surfacing, breaking free from the jaws of fate. Mason squeezed her hand, eyes wide with disbelief. "We did it," he breathed, as realization began to settle around them. The chaos around them began to subside. The heavy storm clouds rolled back. A fleeting glimpse of star-specked sky emerged. A wave of relief washed over Sophia, and with it, the weight of survival felt like a certain kind of freedom. As they settled onto the safety of the boat, breathing tightly, they curled up next to each other, their limbs still trembling. Suddenly, laughter erupted from widely grateful mouths. Where once was panic, now was pure exhilaration. "I thought we wouldn't make it," Mason admitted, a mixture of awe and vulnerability in his voice. "We fought," she replied triumphantly, tears of relief blurring her vision. Relief turned to hope, and they embraced, each heartbeat weaving friendship from the chaos. A fresh dawn began to break as the rescuers steered the boat away from the wreckage, heading towards safety. They had overcome the storm, and within that passage lay a promise of brighter days. A new beginning. As the sun peeked over the horizon, painting the sky in hues of gold and pink, from the wreckage and chaos, together they would rise. And now, this is your moment. You need to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories coming your way. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm. And flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this thrilling ending. Instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to show your support.